What are the two most valuable attributes in business leadership? How about knowledge and humility? Gavin Price is a senior lecturer at Gibbs. Knowledge, obviously, that's the base.
Yes. True knowledge, though. Not just thinking that you know, but having a deep appreciation of the various issues at hand, and not just assuming from shooting at the hip that you've got the right answer.
And what about then humility? Because also, if true knowledge and humility seem as of the opposite sides of the same coin.
Yeah, it takes great courage to be humble enough to admit that you don't have all the answers, and therefore you need to go get the answers, as opposed to demonstrating and acting as if you have the answers and pushing down anybody that may have a different opinion to you.
And that is often a big failing in business leadership, because I am the chief executive. I've spent 20 years climbing over the corpses of my predecessors to get here.
Absolutely.
I must know something.
Oh, yes. And, you know, there are many leaders who should take a lot of insight from that parable of the emperor and his imaginary clothing. You know, they sit there butt naked for all intents and purposes, pretending that they know, and nobody is brave enough to speak up to say, hang on, I don't get it, I don't understand, because their leader is so powerful that they create that fear in the minds of the other board members to be able to speak up, to have a contra opinion to the executive. But if the executive was more humble and saying, look, I don't have all the answers, let's discuss it and debate it a little further so we have a deeper understanding. And that is true knowledge.
Have we seen an evolution in the boardroom approach to the issues of knowledge and humility?
To some extent, yes, of course. You know, the old sort of command and conquer approach arising out of the origins of military strategy, you know, business strategy came out of military strategy, and so business behavior came out of militaristic behavior as well. And that has evolved to more elegant social dynamics, because it's not war out there, and more can be accomplished through cooperation and cooperation than it can through conquest.
And when one looks at that particular issue of knowledge and humility, when one comes across a humble business leader, one is truly blown away. But it takes enormous courage,
yes,
for somebody in that position to show that humility.
Indeed it does. Of course, like all virtues, there's a vice. You know, there's too much of a good thing in terms of the concept of virtues, and there's obviously too little of a good thing. So humbleness and humility speaks of lack of ego. And so I think we can all relate to interacting with somebody who is full of themselves, who is full with their own ego. And when you are in that position and you're interacting with them, you pretty much disengage, because they already know the answer. So what's the point of trying to share something different with them if they already know the answers?
How does this go to the concept of what is integral to the Gibbs process of Socratic leadership?
Well, in terms of the teaching style, of course, the Socratic method arose from the story of how Socrates tried to establish that he was not the most knowledgeable person in all of Athens, because his friend had just visited the Oracle of Delphi, and the Oracle of Delphi had proclaimed that old Socrates was the most knowledgeable person in all of Athens, and he couldn't accept this. And so he made it his mission to go and prove the Oracle wrong. So he would go to the poets, the politicians, all the allegedly wise people, and ask them certain questions, just testing their understanding of certain concepts. What is purity, or what is faith? And they would have a superficial answer, of course, but then when asking deeper questions, he would soon discover that they have not any real understanding of these issues. And so it soon dawned on Socrates that maybe the oracle was right. And he was probably the most knowledgeable person in all of Athens. Not because he knew anything, but at least he knew that he did not know. And that is what gave him that advantage. If you know your limitations, if you are open and honest enough with yourself, and therefore humble enough to recognize your limitations, you can bolster and you can support and substantiate your arguments so that it is more compelling, as opposed to just saying, because I said so, because I'm the boss.
The risk, however, of that approach is that you can beat around the bush for a terribly long time.
Yes, that's why when it comes to virtues, there's too much of a good thing as well. There is that fine line. You know, there is such a thing as being, you know, inappropriately modest and too self-effacing, and people then don't take you as seriously as what they should. So you do have to walk that fine line. And that golden mean, as Aristotle put it, is a very difficult thing to do. And it does take skill, and it takes years of practice and experience. But that is what we're trying to encourage the business leaders to do. Here at Gibbs, and during the MBA, the learning process, but also back in the boardroom. so that they can hopefully put into practice what we preach here.
It's a very difficult ask, especially if you are in a boardroom where there is an autocrat in charge who can force you to amend your behavior.
Sure.
Because you want to engage but are unable to engage on equal terms.
Yes. That being said, a lot of people are afraid to have a contra view. You need to have the courage to have that contra view.
But you need, that's why knowledge and humility. Knowledge comes first.
Yes.
And then you can afford to be humble.
Sure.
Without the knowledge,
Absolutely.
humility is stupidity,
Yes.
isn't it?
You know, to a certain extent,
Yeah.
that being said, of course, there was another Greek philosopher, Epictetus, who said, and I'm paraphrasing now, if you wish to grow and develop, you must be prepared to be thought of as foolish. In other words, you must have the courage to make mistakes. There's nothing wrong with making mistakes and letting people know that you don't know, so that you can know. Rather you genuinely do know than you fake it. You know, I think too many people there's too much ego, and related to that ego is this lack of sincerity around their true level of knowledge that allows them to mislead people into the extent of their level of understanding, which then leads to this arrogance.
Yeah.
So arrogance, which again, if I can throw in another philosopher of Seneca, his view of the most important of all the virtues was prudence. Now, if the business leaders of the time of the economic credit crunch had adopted the philosophy of prudence,
yes,
I think we would have been in a far better position today than we are now.
Gavin Price, good to talk to you. Thank you very much. If you ever thought that there was no value in studying philosophy, you've just been proved wrong. Gavin Price is a senior lecturer at Gibbs.